Welcome back to News Channel 7 at 4. And if you've been in Florida for very long, you know that paying for that car insurance is very expensive. So we have Dante here from Value Penguin, who's actually figured out that it's the second highest in the country.
We've seen an increased number of new people moving to Florida. It's created congestion on the roads. It's creating more accidents and ultimately making the premiums go up across the state.
What can we do to try to help with that cost?
And that's one of the hardest things to deal with. It's something that we require in the state of Florida. Anyone who owns a vehicle is required to have a minimum automobile insurance, PIP insurance, as well as property damage coverage. So we have to deal with insurance companies if we're going to be owning a car. And that's one of the hardest things to deal with because these insurance companies are still making billions and billions of dollars in profit. And unfortunately, they're passing all those additional costs in claims onto the consumer. But at the same time, we also highly recommend the consumer do the research for the different types of coverage and always, if they can afford it, purchase coverage in addition to the bare minimums. The minimum insurance is only personal injury protection, which is the first $10,000 of medical bills, as well as property damage. Minimum is $10,000. So if your vehicle is worth more than that, or obviously our potential medical expenses, because we value the quality of life so much, could be infinity, right? We have to buy additional coverage. The number one most important coverage I recommend to protect you from those Florida visitors that might be driving a little crazier than we'd like is to buy what's called uninsured motorist coverage or underinsured motorist coverage. So that will help protect you if the person that hits you injures you and doesn't have enough coverage, or even worse, has no coverage. That steps in the place of the defendant, the person that hit you, and will help pay for the damages to you that they caused. Hugely important and highly recommend. As a consumer, we always have to balance the value of what we're purchasing, and that includes automobile insurance. So we have to consider, okay, I want the premium to be as low as possible, but we also have to consider that what if I was the victim of, for example, an automobile accident or damage to my vehicle due to storm? Could I afford to pay for this myself? So for those that are suffering hardships from prior natural disasters, they also have to consider, well, what if my car was totaled? Would I be able to afford to pay that? So it's a balancing act between, of course, trying to save dollars and cents, but also what would happen if the worst happened to my vehicle and where would that leave me? So, I always recommend don't buy the minimum insurance, buy additional coverages to protect the types of perils that could affect you the most. It goes by the zip code and the age of the driver, as well as driving history. So those are the three biggest contributing factors to increase in the cost. And a lot of those things we can't control. We can't really necessarily fix immediately our driving history. We can't necessarily control immediately where we live. We definitely can't control our age. So it's something that Florida consumers just have to deal with. Typically, the more rural areas have a lower premium and the more populated areas have a higher premium. This is due to congestion on the roads. More traffic equals more accidents. It includes also the potential to have an increase in car thefts, which could potentially be a claim. In addition, there could be more accidents related or damage related to basically property damage from storms, et cetera, tend to affect more populated areas, typically more than the rural areas. But we highly recommend trying to keep as clean of a driving record as possible, because you will get punished financially if your driving record suffers.
If we do have a not so perfect driving record, what can we do to help with that?
Typically, the driving courses are done after a ticket or after an accident, after some sort of citation, and they don't really help. So the more citations, the more accident history, including DUIs and other traffic-related offenses that someone has on the record, there's not a whole lot they can do to keep the premiums down. The good news is that most insurance companies only go back either 3 or 5 years. So if your negative driving history that would impact your premiums is older than that, typically you won't be punished too bad.
Anything else that you would like to include for our viewers before we wrap up?
These insurance companies are your best friend and they're happy to take your money and provide policies. But if anything happens to you and you have to file a claim, from my experience of doing this for over a decade, they aren't quite as friendly. So anything that can be done to help give a little bit of a level playing field to the consumers and citizens of Florida when they need to file a claim. We recommend that you pay close attention to that and purchase the insurances you need to protect yourself.
Thank you so much, Dante, for offering this expertise to us. We'll be right back after this break.